They shook hands, one of the best human customs going to my way of thinking. Although, in my world, we do some cool meet and greet stuff too.
This is I Don't Even Own a Television. Dog on It, a Chet and Bernie mystery.
There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all. 'Cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
Welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. It's a podcast about bad books. I'm J.W. Friedman.
I'm Chris. Wag more, bark less collision.
And this time around, we're talking about a book by Spencer Quinn called Dog on It, a Chet and Bernie mystery.
Chet and Bernie, you say?
Yes, well, who are Chet and Bernie?
Well, Chet is a dog.
Yeah.
Of indeterminate and undescribed breed, but over 100 pounds.
He is large.
He's flunked out of dog cop school, which is kind of hilarious.
Yep.
And Bernie, of course, is an elderly democratic socialist from... No.
Well, wait, first of all, is Bernie a dog?
No, Bernie, like every character who we will name by name in this book...
Not true.
...is not a dog. I'm not going to talk about Iggy. Bernie is the only... Bernie is a human. Chet is the only non-human who will play any role in the plot of this book. I'm going to say that again. Chet is the only non-human who will play any role in the plot of this book. All other characters who play a role in the plot of this book are human beings.
Wait.
Bipedal, hairy, but not furry. Plucked, if you will, like a chicken. Possessed of hands. The capacity for speech. And all the other things that come with the human endowment. Not any other kind of animal.
Which ones are talking pigs?
This will be the last episode.
Okay. We just need to make this clear. There's been a lot of confusion. A
huge degree of difficulty move. We picked this book, without a ton of thought going into it. And about 2 days after we did, I got this icy chill in my bowels when I was like, oh, fuck, another talking animal book. I'm so doomed.
Just for people who haven't been keeping up, or if you're new to the show, a few episodes ago, we did a book by Jimmy Buffett called Swine Not that featured a family who had an amazing pig. And I'd say
a human family who had an amazing pig.
And I'd call it a deluge of correspondence came to us saying that people couldn't tell until like halfway through the episode that the whole family weren't pigs. And we'll admit that's on us.
Yeah, that's on me. And I'm... we restrained ourselves in intervening episodes, mostly about non-magical animals, only involving humans. We restrained ourselves and did not point out explicitly that these books
are not about pigs.
Were not about magical pigs. But this time, it is incumbent upon us to stress. Say it with me. Only one dog.
I want to talk about Iggy later.
There's only one dog who matters.
There's a supporting cast of dogs. But we'll make sure to tell you which ones are dogs.
Because this book is padded like the guy who is training dogs to attack. It's the only reason those other dogs are in there.
So basically, if you've ever wanted to read a hard-boiled mystery that starts with a first-person account of a dog taking a leak, then this is the book for you.
Page 2, dog peeing. Page 3, human female described by a dog as smelling like she's in heat. And yet, we persisted.
Yeah. I mean, this book, it should be mentioned.
It gets a lot better after that.
Is narrated from the perspective of Chet, who is the dog. So while he doesn't talk or do anything particularly magical other than...
narrate a book.
Narrate a book, yeah, exactly. He is the narrator of this book, and I think before we go any further, it makes sense to talk about what this book isn't, because I think when you hear mystery, narrated by a dog, you're going to have some preconceived notions we need to shake. And the first one is
Shake like a dog shaking the water out of its coat?
The first one is that this isn't a kid's book.
Right.
Like, this is very much a book geared towards adults about a hard-boiled PI kind of situation.
Yeah.
Kidnapping. And
hard-boiled is maybe a little strong. Like, it's
Matlock-ish?
I would say I was going to pitch it at more like your Rockford Files.
Yeah, Columbo kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's a man who's kind of maybe on just barely the far side of the prime of his life. It's got kind of an amiable Rockford Files-like tone. It's not, for one thing, it's not a murder mystery. Which
That's true.
That might have been one of my high points. I was like, oh, you don't need to take the stakes up to 10 to tell a story. You can just tell a cool story about something that's not a dead body.
Yeah. So, yeah, hard-boiled is maybe a little strong, but it's definitely a detective novel.
Yeah.
Narrated by a dog.
Not a kid's book.
Not a kid's book. And it's also worth pointing out once again, this is not a magic dog who talks and solves mysteries and stuff.
He barks all the time.
Yeah.
When he finds a clue, but nobody ever has any idea what the fuck he's barking about, which is great.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they completely resist going full Lassie is one of the best things about the book. Like, he's just a dog. And, like, half the time he's barking, he doesn't realize he's barking until somebody yells at him to shut up.
It's one of my favorite parts of the book.
Oh, my God, it's so good.
There are so many moments where he's like, I wonder if I could chew that, and then someone will be yelling at him like, hey, stop chewing on that.
Yeah, exactly. So it is in no way a magic dog or a kid's book.
I do think we probably couldn't get much further in this without mentioning that this owes a gigantic debt to Lillian Jackson Braun and her series of the Cat Who Blank books.
I never read any of those. Are those good?
They're entertaining. If you liked this, you would like those, although it's narrated by a human. It's about a guy who's a journalist, I think, and he has two cats that kind of point him in the direction to solving mysteries while being normal cats that don't talk.
Like the mystery of why is that door shut? I would like that door to be open. The mystery of will I ever be fed again?
Did you just clean my litter box? Because that means I have to jump in it immediately. No, I mean, I think that this book couldn't have existed without that series. It was a really long-running series that was very popular and I think kind of introduced the idea of quote-unquote animal lover mysteries to the world. So, I don't think that this would have been around without it. It's about a relatively hapless human who's guided towards solving a mystery by a smart but non-communicative animal.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of is a genre that Lillian Jackson Braun did invent, as strange and narrow as it may be.
But it's pretty satisfying. And what's great about the perspective of the dog is it is very dog. He's smart, but he has basically no short-term memory. He has basically no attention span.
Yep.
And that gag gets old fairly quickly.
To you.
To me, yes. But it's never dropped. You know, this isn't Scooby-Doo. This isn't a dog-shaped human with a speech impediment. Like, it's just a dog.
Yeah.
He naps a lot.
He operates
He's a sucker for being scritched.
He operates mainly by smell. Yeah. We need to get it applauded 60 seconds soon, but before we do, I also wanted to mention this is the first book in a series of 8, about to be 9.
Right.
And they all have the worst puns for titles. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, let's hear them.
Here's just a few selection.
Oh, I think I need all 8 if you've got them.
I don't, but
Okay.
I have the good ones.
Okay, you got the good ones. Excellent.
Thereby Hangs a Tale would be the next book in the series.
Is that Tale?
Oh, no, of course not.
Oh.
Followed by A Fistful of Collars.
Okay, that is legit excellent.
Oh, get ready. They get better. Paw in Order. And this is my absolute favorite. Heart of Barkness.
Oh, that's very good. I'm just going to say this. Spencer Quinn, if you would like some help brainstorming some more of these, you can email me through IDon'tEvenOwnATelevision@gmail.com. I don't want any money, but a thanks in the acknowledgments would be nice.
Yeah. Chet could just say you smell good or something.
Yeah, no, I don't want that. I want my name in the acknowledgments.
Okay. All right. So
you don't even have to give me full credit. You can just say creative consultant or a helping paw.
There you go. Helping paw. Let's go ahead and do plot in 60 seconds. Here's a song.
Nobody knows if you finish or not. You got 60 seconds to give them the plot. Plot in 60 seconds.
All right. So, Collision.
Yes.
Are you ready to do this tale, Tale?
Oh, you wag.
Doggone it. I can't believe this book is called Doggone It, by the way.
Come on. I know we both like puns, but that's no reason for us to both get completely unleashed here.
Oh, man.
Look,
Okay.
listen, I don't mean to kibble with your every single joke.
I'm frustrated with myself because I can't think of any dog puns off the top of my head. So let's go ahead and get started if you're ready to try to sum this up in 60 seconds or less.
I'm sure going to try.
All right, begin.
Bernie Little is a freshly divorced private investigator with a dog, Chet, our narrator. Bernie and Chet are hired by Cynthia Chambliss to find her high school-age daughter, Madison, who didn't come home from school. Then Madison comes home from school. Then Madison disappears again. Her dad, Damon, Cynthia's ex-husband, is a rich real estate developer with a Russian employee and, as it turns out, serious cash flow problems. As Chet and Bernie investigate Madison's disappearance, Chet is dog-napped, put in a choke collar, and threatened, turned over to a non-no-kill shelter, rescued by a journalist who recognizes him. There's a car chase. Bernie goes over a cliff. Chet has to pull him to safety, which is something a very good dog would do. And eventually, it turns out Damon had borrowed money from a Russian loan shark who, when not paid back, kidnapped Madison for motivational purposes, which Bernie puts together right before getting kidnapped by the Russian loan shark, meaning Chet and the attractive journalist have to rescue Bernie to solve the mystery and save the day.
Hey, you did it. Yeah, so there you go. There's your capsule description of Doggone It, a Chet and Bernie mystery.
I really missed an opportunity just to read the Wikipedia summary of All Dogs Go to Heaven or something.
Lady and the Tramp.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to note along the way, this book is filled with things that I consider delights. And
like a trip to the dog park, Jay likes it every single time.
Yeah, this is one of those books we did for the show that I ended up actually really enjoying. And I think to an extent there's an enthusiasm gap here for sure, but I kind of loved this book. It's stupid as hell, and I completely recognize that. But I think this is kind of the point in my life where I have to acknowledge the fact that I just have a huge weak spot for dumb animal books, because I just really love this. I thought it was adorable. In the same way that Bunnicula is. Uh-huh. You know, the idea of an animal narrator, I guess it's just, I can't get past it. I can't not like something like this. I want
to pump the brakes just the tiniest bit for two reasons. One, this is not quite a towering literary achievement on par with Bunnicula. I want to say that, and I will die on that hill if need be. But I don't think the enthusiasm gap was quite as big as you're making it out to be.
Okay.
And so I don't want to come across like a hater. I think this is a pretty good book. I was sort of torn as I was reading it because the mystery part is fairly well done. It's just a solid mystery. I wouldn't even say fairly well done. It's just well done. It's a solid mystery on par with anything else you would read in the genre. And I kept oh yes, I'm basically enjoying this. But then I kept stumbling on but it's narrated by a friggin' dog, man. Come on. So I do think that there's two big ideas here, right? One, tell a pretty good mystery. Great. 10 out of 10. Nailing that one. Two, have it narrated by a dog. And I don't think those two are super well integrated in this particular book. But as you've hinted, there are more. And as I happen to know, I don't think you've mentioned it into the microphone, but we discussed it a bit earlier. You've continued down the path with Chet and Bernie, I believe. So do they get a little more well integrated, or is it always pretty much this so far?
It gets more well integrated.
Okay.
So full disclosure for the people at home, we're recording this on a Sunday. I finished reading this book, I'd say Thursday or Friday, and I immediately started the next book in the series, which I'm now almost done with. And the next book in the series, the mystery revolves around a kidnapped show dog. So the dog stuff and the detective stuff do start to kind of mesh together a lot more. However, it's still pretty much this, to the point where there are actual lines quoted verbatim.
Okay.
from the first one. There's definitely a formula at work.
I mean, I read this, and I've said this about books before, almost universally worse books. I do not know why this is not a well-regarded show on USA right now.
I think a lot of it, to me, is because when you put this on the screen, you get something like Turner and Hooch, right? Where it's just like, oh, here's a guy and a dog. And to me, what's really charming about this is the perspective of the dog on human interactions.
I don't disagree, but you remember the Spencer for Hire TV show?
Yeah, I do.
Which was basically the same as this in terms of stakes of mystery, amiability, likability. What I'm saying is, that show had human narration. Basically, just do Spencer for Hire.
Yeah.
Put it in the desert. Put your hero, Bernie, in a, what does he like so much? Hawaiian
shirts. Which,
right?
If you can read that and not think of Weekend at Bernie's,
that's a tough,
it was hard. I kept picturing him as a dead man because his name is Bernie and he loves Hawaiian shirts.
He's also a former pitcher.
Yep. Described
in at least one situation as loving a bargain and named Bernie, but also bigger than everybody.
Yeah.
I found some of those aspects of character to not go super well together.
Yeah, you feel like he'd be more of a Bernard in that case. He might not go for the shortened version.
Yeah.
But he is a very affable chap. He's into dad jokes.
Very much so.
Cares a lot about the environment.
Right. Exactly, which is kind of great. So I honestly think, you just do Spencer, throw a burly-ish, likable guy in a Hawaiian shirt and have it narrated by the dog who's always there.
Oh.
And just kind of downplay the dog's involvement, but the dog is the one narrating it. This is a no-brainer. Spencer Quinn, again, if you would like
if you want to develop this,
if you want to work on the show Bible, that's Chris Collision at idontevenownatelevision@gmail.com. Let's go to the dogs on USA together.
Unfortunately, I think those days of TV are kind of over, and what you need to do now is make this really gritty, like Bernie would have to have a serious drinking problem, and there'd have to be some kind of weird mystery that's revealed via plot twist in the cliffhanger last episode, where it turns out Chet hasn't existed the whole time.
What?
Something like that.
It's got to be a gimmick. There's a time shift element. It's all set in 1978, and we have period pastiche music.
I keep thinking about True Detective now, narrated by a dog.
Oh my god.
True Detective Season 4.
True Dogtective.
A frisbee is a flat circle. A man once told me.
Don't do that on my lawn.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, everything we're doing is just sniffing assholes and licking our own balls.
It's true. It's like sometimes you're just at the end of your leash. You just gotta let go and just take off running and then catch a tennis ball and bring it back over and over again like some damn dog playing fetch.
So I'm not into the gritty reboot. I am very into the idea of making a TV show that, let's just say it, we dads can watch and enjoy in a low-key, low-stakes way.
Some comedy music cues.
I don't want to go that far with it. I want it to be serious-ish, but lighthearted. Somewhere...
You really just want to make the Rockford Files with a dog.
Yeah, somewhere a little grittier than, say, Monk or Psych, but not quite the stakes of True Detective narrated by a dog.
Which would still be the best thing ever. Season 4. Speaking of which, Nick Pizzolatto, if you're interested, you can hit me up at idontevenownatelevision@gmail.com. I'll tell you how to work some dog narration into your dialogue-heavy gloomfest. Also, bring back Marashal Ali because he's awesome.
We are either about to become moderately successful television producers, or I don't know, possibly sued into oblivion, and I can't tell which.
Before we go any further, I just want to give people at home a taste of the voice of this book, because we've been talking a lot about it. We haven't really read anything. Oh, and the cat has jumped on my lap, because damn cats,
he has
as Chet would say.
He has heard the word dog too much, and he's all fired up. He can't take it anymore.
But so the whole book is kind of written in this voice. We sat... God damn it, cat.
It really is all written in that voice.
We sat in the TV room, Bernie on the couch with his laptop, me and the lazy boy with my bad leg resting on a pillow. The Hound of the Baskervilles was on the screen. I'd seen it more times than I could count, which was 2 in my case. Me and Bernie, for example. But the way that hound's howl kept scaring the pants off all those people never got old. If only I could howl like that. Hey, maybe I could. Chet, please. You do that every time at the exact same scene. I do? And if you don't find that even slightly endearing, right, you either have like a much lower tolerance for cornball humor than I do, or, I don't know, you have no heart. One or the other.
Maybe both.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. But this book is goofy and silly, and yeah, Chet is not only not a magical dog, I mean, he is not super bright either. And
yes,
I think
he's a dog.
Yeah, because he's a dog. It's important. He's very loyal. He's really good at smelling things and following tracks and whatnot. But yeah.
But he's not that great at it. There's this longish set piece where they're trying to find the place, where Bernie and Chet are trying to find the place that Chet had been kidnapped to. And Chet is doing the best he can, but basically just leads them in a giant circle because he's not a magical tracker dog. He's just a dog.
And he's trying to smell for himself.
Right.
Which actually is...
Also,
it really jumped out at me because there's a part during this where he's describing his scent.
Oof.
And he uses the word soupçon.
Yeah.
And I almost dropped the book to text you right at that moment.
It hit me when I got to that point because I was like, ha, Jay can't ban it from this episode because it's in the text.
It's hard to describe my smell, a mix of old leather, salt and pepper, mink coats. I know about mink coats on account of Bernie had one, his grandma's, that he gave to Lita, and a soupçon, a favorite word of Bernie's, meaning, I think, a tiny drop of soup. In my case, cream of tomato.
Yeah. And Bernie is, he's a bit of an intellectual, right? He's always using big words. Although, again, that is portrayed through the lens of a dog's perspective. So perhaps the words aren't as giant as that. I don't think I'm anybody's idea of a brainiac, and I say soupçon all the time. I say chronology, and most of the time I don't have to explain what I mean when I say it, unlike poor Bernie.
Bernie is often described as being the smartest human in the room, but it's also by his loving dog who thinks he's a superhero, so it's kind of hard to get the picture of. He's very much, I guess, just what you'd call like a blue-collar intellectual, I would say, almost. He thinks a lot about the environment. That's a big part of this book, is it takes place in the desert, and Bernie is constantly pissed off about the fact that people waste water, to the point where you get paragraph-long, dissertations from him about, back in the 1800s, there used to be water all over the place here.
When he drives up and sees a green lawn full of beautiful Kentucky bluegrass, in front of an Arizona tract home, he lets us know about it. And I was like, wow, who's taking things from my brain and putting them onto the page in this? Honestly, that was one of my favorite parts, is his complete peevish grumpiness at the environment that he has chosen to inhabit.
I liked that, and I also like the interplay between the fact that happens, but green grass is also Chet's favorite thing in the world because he's a dog and he loves to run on golf courses and stuff. So there's a lot of that. I don't understand why he's mad about this, but boy, is he mad about this. And I found that entertaining.
Yeah, every time the dog sees water, he's like, I can't understand why Bernie is always complaining there's not enough water. I can see some water, which in a way is one of the most savage parodies of the what global warming.
Yeah, it's cold outside.
Yeah, exactly. Perspective. So I thought that was extremely good.
One more small thing that I just really liked about this book that does continue. This is us covering
all the small things about dogs. Call us Bark 182.
God, stop it. I'm going to start referencing doggo memes if you don't calm down with the puns. Such wow.
Can't believe that you're trying to muzzle me like that.
No, but Chet, one of my favorite aspects of this book, and it does continue into the next one, and I assume probably all of the following. Chet refers to all other dogs as my guys.
My guys.
Which I love. And, an example would be Bernie stopped in front of a sign. I couldn't read the words, but there was also a picture of one of my guys with a thick line drawn through him. And, I find this incredibly endearing. It just reminds me of my dudes.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he's like, I smelled something. It wasn't one of my guys. And that refers to all dogs of all calibers.
Yep.
They're all my guys.
They're all just dogs.
Yeah.
So we know Chet would have the easiest answer of all time if he were to go on WTF with Mark Maron. Eventually, Maron would ask him, who are your guys? And Chet would just bark.
Yeah.
Because he's a dog.
Yeah.
He can't answer questions on a podcast.
He'd be a horrible guest. I don't know, though. Probably better than some of the previous ones.
Ayo!
I'm sure Chet's never forced anyone to watch him masturbate.
Oh.
So...
I have met a lot of dogs.
Actually, yeah, I was just about to say. Anyway, that was tasteless. Let's move on here into high points, low points. So here's a song.
High points are high, and the points are low. High points, and low points, get ready to go.
All right, so high points and low points. Who wants to go first? Let's start with some high points, and I'll start us off here. And I think, we've talked about this a lot, but the biggest high point to me is that while he's incredibly helpful in solving the mystery, Chet the Jet, as he's called, because he's fast, and he's a good leaper, as he says.
He's only called that by the 9-year-old son of Bernie.
Yeah, but to himself, he says, they call me Chet the Jet.
Yeah.
And he doesn't understand why humans have last names or nicknames. He's like, I've just always been Chet.
Just a terrible dog name. I hope that they explain that someday in the series.
So far, no.
No.
But despite the fact that he is incredibly helpful to his human partner in the PI agency, I just think it's really good that he is a dog who thinks in a doggish way, has a lot of insight about things like how chewing a chew toy feels or why ice is a delicious snack, how barking works as a form of communication. I think that's great. And he does help solve the crime, but it's basically just through a series of random coincidences, which, admittedly, not the best way to plot your story. There's a lot of dude sex mocking Jay here, for sure. However, I think it's great that that's kind of how this works. He doesn't at any point, like you said earlier, go full Lassie. He's not tugging Bernie by the leg directly to the killer's house, He's
not writing messages in the sawdust with his nose.
Yeah. His experiences do help point towards the solution of the crime, but still he eats old hot dogs from the ground and has detailed fantasies about chewing tennis balls.
Right.
And at no point is anything but just a dog.
Yeah.
This it's one of my favorites, and this is why I mentioned earlier we were going to mention other characters that are a dog, because I'm about to say the name Iggy. Ladies and gentlemen at home, Iggy is a dog. He lives next door.
It has nothing to do with the story other than he takes up a couple of pages.
Yeah, but I loved this conversation, or this line. I barked one of my most deep-throated barks, fierce and savage, and a wonderful sound. Even scared me a little bit, which made me do it again, even wilder. I like to frighten myself back for frightening myself. From next door came Iggy's yip, yip, yip. Were we cooking or what? Iggy was a great pal.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that he refers to Iggy several times as his best friend because they bark at each other.
There's a moment where I think he and Iggy are barking. I can't remember if it's him and Iggy. I think it is. And they're barking back and forth, and he just says, we'd gotten a pretty good rhythm going.
Yep, that's in my dramatic reading.
And it was like, okay, this guy, Spencer Quinn, it's not his real name. An ancillary high point of mine is I just showed the physical book to the Lady Noodles, who saw the most charming author dog photo ever.
That is great, yeah.
And she was just like, oh.
It's in
silhouette.
I don't think
Spencer Quinn is his real name. And I was like, you're onto something there.
Do you know what else this fellow actually wrote? His real name, because I had this feeling when I was reading this. I was like, something about this feels really, really familiar. And so I looked it up, and his real name is Peter Abrahams. He actually held on to his secret identity pretty tightly for a long time. Like, he didn't want to reveal who Spencer Quinn was, probably to distance this from his other more quote-unquote serious work.
Okay.
But he wrote the book The Fan that became the Robert De Niro movie.
No way.
Yeah, which I've read.
Wesley Snipes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've read that book, and that's why I think this sounded the voice was a little familiar.
Whoa.
He's also written a lot of other stuff and is really, really well regarded in the literary world. None other than Stephen King has referred to him as his favorite American suspense writer.
Stephen King blurbed the back of this,
Yep.
and I just want to read it very quickly because it gets... I disagree with one thing in it, but it really gets at the appeal, I think. Spencer Quinn speaks 2 languages, suspense and dog, fluently. Sometimes funny, sometimes touching, and in a few places terrifying. Dog on it has got more going for it than 50 of those cat cozies. Okay, that's a cheap shot.
Don't talk shit about LBJ.
Yeah, cheap shot, Steve.
And I mean LJB. Never mind. LJB is cool. LBJ, no. You could talk shit about him. All right, continue.
The best thing about the book is Chet, a canine Sam Spade full of joie de vivre. He's a great character because he sums up what we all love in dogs, how they love life and how they love us. My sincere advice to you is to rush to your nearest bookstore and put your paws on this enchanting, one-of-a-kind novel. Well, now it's one of 9, but, except for the
9 of a kind.
Except for the cheap shot about cat cozies, I disagree with only the idea that this is a particularly suspenseful novel.
No.
Actually, one of the things I really liked about it is it was kind of like loping along and the stakes aren't super high.
And one of the problems, I think, or not really the problems, and this isn't enough really to warrant a low point, but because our dog does, quote unquote, kind of know what's happening because he gets kidnapped early on by the villains, you as a reader know who the bad guys are by about halfway through this book,
right,
while the detective is still kind of stumbling around trying to figure it out. So there isn't a lot of suspense if you're reading it from a whodunit perspective, for sure. But there is kind of a lot of suspense in a moment to moment, especially like some pretty harrowing things happen to Chet. So
yeah, so I haven't done an official high point yet, so let me get that out of the way real quick and then we can move to low points. I was, like I said, very much on the fence about this book. I was really having trouble reconciling the 2 elements. Like I said, I didn't think they played as well together as I might have liked to have seen, but then there is a moment where there's a big car chase, a bad car crash. Chet gets thrown clear and is unharmed very early in that. Bernie is hanging from one arm over a cliff. Chet won't abandon him, and eventually Bernie uses his free hand to loosen his belt, and Chet uses his massive canine strength and love to help pull Bernie up off the cliff, and I teared up a tiny bit. And that was extremely good.
that's what Chet and his guys are all about, man.
That's what Chet and his guys are all about.
No, I mean, it's really hard to put into words, but like, you could tell that this author really loves dogs
and gets dogs. That's why I read that Stephen King thing. He really does do a great job of portraying just the kind of innocence and goodness of your average dog.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to come back to that too. It's like he really loves dogs, but I feel like he really understands the kind of, I don't want to say mindless, but just the way that dogs love people.
Yep.
Or good dogs do, at least, which is just kind of this feckless kind of just like, you're my dude, I'm here for you no matter what, you know, like, and that really, it's endearing.
Yeah, at the end of that scene, Bernie scritches Chet and says, I owe you, and Chet's quick self-comment is a preposterous notion. We were partners.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
If you aren't charmed by that a little bit.
Yeah, you have, I would say no heart, but what I really mean by that is you have a very different relationship with dogs than I do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, some people aren't dog people, and I can understand that, but
I am a dog person.
Yeah, me too. You know, I like cats too, but ultimately, in my heart of hearts, dogs are awesome. In the words of noted philosopher King Milhouse, dogs are outstanding. Which I believe he exclaims upon seeing two dogs having sex outside of a classroom.
And that is, I mean, that's one to grow on.
It is.
Dogs
are outstanding. look, those two dogs are going at it over a tire. All right, anyway. Serious face because we've got to do low points. Me first or you?
Well, you go first.
All right, so while it's never explicit, there's definitely a whiff of the casually conservative about this book. Bernie is definitely ecologically tuned in, environmentally tuned in. So, you can't really go full, GOP style with the commentary here. It's not that bad. But there's more than a tiny bit of kind of flag-waving, goddammit America rules and cops are the best kind of stuff happening here. And there's also cartoon Russians that talk like Boris Badenov, which is a little, I'd say this book has an undercurrent of quote-unquote traditional American values. And it was never enough to explicitly turn me off or to stop me from reading more books in the series. But there are a few hints of, I would say, kind of, I don't want to say conservative in the political sense, but let's say conservative in the old-fashioned stodgy sense. So yeah, that's my first low point. But like I said, it really shouldn't scare you away from reading this book, in my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of white daddish stuff in here, but there's never any Steven Seagal in the desert killing Muslims with snakes or anything. So, there you go.
That was a reference to those of you who might not know.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We should mention.
not just one of Jay's insane Rolling Rock fueled fantasies.
What if Steven Seagal was out in the desert killing Muslims with snakes? No, we read a whole book about that, folks.
Written by Steven Seagal. Yeah, that one was not one of our pitches to try to become big-time television producers or even mid-time television producers. Anyway, my low point, again, has much more to do with dogs than this book. There is a moment where Chet, who tells us about 4,000 times how strapped for cash Bernie is, goes to the dog groomer because who has time to brush their own fricking dog? And the dog groomer finds a big bump on its back. At which point I yelled, "Oh, fuck no.
Yeah.
I do not need this dog who I've spent 270 pages with by this point to have a fucking tumor. No, thank you."
Well, it has yet to be mentioned in the second book, and I'm almost finished with it. So I think maybe that was the seed of something that never metastasized, we'll say. Maybe that's not the best thing to make a joke about.
Right.
But either way, yeah. This hasn't come back yet.
Right.
And once again, it's written in such a vague-ish way that it could refer to something that happened in one of the many fights Chet has gotten into up until this point.
That would be an easy out.
Yeah.
And we'll get to this, but yeah, some of the plot contrivances lean, I think we could say, toward the easy out. I legitimately expected the straight razor wielding bad guy to inadvertently slice it off and save his life that way or something.
Oh, God.
I'm serious. I was legitimately expecting that at one point when the villain was revealed to be brandishing a straight razor. I did want to say, though, that I understand that my aversion to saying this dog is not immortal conflicts poorly with my disdain for what I call comic book time, in which events occur but they never actually change things. Even deaths happen, but then they're reversed because the only thing that matters is basically maintaining the status quo forever.
Yeah.
So I understand that there's a certain tension there. What I'm saying is advance your narrative with actions that have consequences, but not at the expense of dogs.
Yeah.
I feel
don't hurt the dog.
Exactly. I feel very strongly about this.
Well, I think you don't need to visit doesthedogdie.com for this one because there are 9 more books in the series.
Right.
So unless they're jam-packed into a very, very short time period, I do not believe that Chet has any form of malignant cancer.
Okay, there's going to be a horrible moment in my life when I'm just wandering down the, shelves of my local library and I see some book called something like A Pause That Refreshes, or The Pause That Refreshes or something. and I'm going to look at the cover, and it's going to say a Chet 2 and Bernie Mystery,
no.
and I'm going to burst into tears right in the library.
No, I think it's fair to say that Chet is in good health. He has a very active Facebook page that I'm not making up. If you go to facebook.com/ChetTheDog, it's where the author promotes all these books as well as posts. Unfortunately, not in character as Chet, which is a little bit of a bummer.
That's a self-imposed error.
Yeah, definitely. Cell phone,
self-inflicted. Okay, so perhaps another low point.
Okay, so there's a romance or an attempt at a romance in this story. It's by far the worst part of the book. It feels really, really forced and awkward. And even though it's being told from the perspective of an animal that doesn't, quote unquote, get it, it can't really disguise the fact that the author's just not great at writing about this particular kind of element of human interaction. Susie, the attractive journalist who does a story about Bernie the PI and Chet, and the story is not very complimentary, but then she refers to him as shambling and things like that. And then over time, they develop a little bit of a kind of back and forth, and there's a budding romance, and it's
Tracy and Hepburn. It ain't.
Yeah, it's really, really awkward. Although, to be fair, it is mentioned many times that Bernie is kind of a loser, and even the dog can tell, and not quote unquote good with the ladies, so that helps. But it's really, really awkward. And now that I know who this author is, having read some of his non-Chet fiction, I would still stand by the fact that he is really not good at writing about human beings, quote unquote, falling in love or quote unquote having romantic relationships or, quote unquote, doing anything that doesn't involve crime. So it is what it is, but I kind of wish they would have just left all of this out because it really doesn't advance the plot. I feel like Bernie and Suzanne,
I think it's
Susie could have just been platonic pals, and it would have been just as good.
That would have been fun. In fact, like a wisecracking PI and a sassy journalist. Come on.
Yeah, and it does. It never really. They don't consummate, for what it's worth.
Oh, I think you might be reading the last few pages a little differently than I do, my friend.
Maybe. But yeah, either way, it doesn't happen, let's say, on the page. And
like perhaps you missed the part where he said, they did it me style. I'm kidding.
Chet, I don't understand why humans face each other. Right, anyway.
Yeah, they really went after it like a couple of my guys.
But yeah, I think... I've never seen a human wear a collar before, but
it's weird. Yeah, they put the collar on, but they never go for a walk.
But I did also want to mention, just to kind of piggyback on the ineptness of the romance plot, there's not a single happy couple or intact relationship in this book. Like, everybody is bitterly divorced and mean as hell to each other and really petty. And that was a pretty huge low point for me. It just, the way romance and its aftermath are portrayed in this is pretty... Well, I mean, I guess it kind of does go along with that USA TV show you were talking about. So
there's like 3 separate debates between Bernie and his client Cynthia about whether it's better to stay in a bad marriage for the sake of the kids or get divorced. And it's like, I kind of got this the first time. Not in your book. The first time it happened in my life.
Yeah.
This is not something that the culture is unaware of.
Yeah, you don't need to write this as...
You didn't invent that.
Yeah. And anytime any of these people interact, it's just in the most bitter, petty, we'll get more into it later. But yeah, it revolves kind of heavily in one of my games that I want to do later on. So I don't want to spoil that too much. But yeah, just the perception of romance and what it leads to and stuff like that in this book, I'd say, is a little weird and skewed and not the best.
Yeah. That leads me to a low point, which is slightly more technical. A lot of the plot of this revolves, as we've said, around very big coincidences they find out that two completely unrelated aspects of the case, or they find out that two things that they don't even know are actually both parts of the case, are in fact related, because they're driving by a convenience store and a guy comes out of the convenience store. Cynthia gets an extremely plot-sensitive phone call, but only gets it after her answering machine starts recording it. So she has the call verbatim, which turns out to be important because her daughter Madison is sending a message to her in a coded way that you only pick up on because of the exact words she uses. There's a moment where old Chet is in the no-kill shelter and is only saved because sassy journalist happens to be writing about animal shelters and went a couple 100 miles out of town to visit a rural one.
To a different state.
Yeah. And sees Chet on the table, tied down and about to get the needle.
Yeah, I mean, like literally seconds.
Yeah.
Seconds from no more Chet.
And it's just all a little too much.
And we should mention that he's brought to this animal shelter because he runs across a group of bikers.
Right.
After he's escaped from the bad guys who have dognapped him.
Right.
He runs across just some random bikers camping in the middle of the desert.
Who feed him and give him some beers.
Yep. That's actually a pretty great scene.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't like beer as much as well, maybe I do.
Yeah.
And then they drop him off at an animal shelter on their way to a bar, which just happens to be the one that Susie's going to do a story. It's a little implausible.
Yeah. I mean, 3 separate times. It's just too much. Anyway.
Especially for a mystery, quote unquote, which... Right. I have a hard time calling this a mystery because, once again, it's solved within the first 100 pages, and you're just kind of watching a guy stumble towards that conclusion while a frustrated dog is like, I wish I could talk to him in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many scenes with him barking and being like, why don't they understand what I'm barking about? And so I don't know if it's as much a mystery as a thriller, to be quite honest.
But the stakes are pretty low. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, genre labels aside.
Yeah. High points. I have one more. When Chet and Bernie first go to humor, I can't remember the mom's name of the missing daughter. You mentioned it earlier.
I can't remember it either.
Madeline?
No, Madison is the daughter.
Yeah, Madison is
Cynthia is the missing teen's mom.
So Cynthia shows up and says, my daughter's been missing for 5 hours. Yeah. And... to humor her, because they desperately need money, Bernie goes to the house to search her room. And while Cynthia is out of the room, Chet discovers a bag of weed. And he brings it to Bernie, who looks at it, puts it back. And then, since she's only been gone for 5 hours, and she's a teenager, and they're not worried about her, they don't narc her out. At no point does Bernie go, hey, your daughter's got weed in here. And I was like, good on you guys for not being narcs. And then just a couple minutes later, she turns up just fine, completely unharmed. So in the grand scheme of things, everything works out great. I like to think, maybe if she had been missing for 2 days or something, he'd be like, hey, your daughter has weed in here. Maybe that's important. But at this point, he's not even really concerned about her well-being, so he doesn't narc her out. Good job.
Yeah, it's slightly undercut by the fact that her weed dealer is a bodybuilding guy who just dropped out of high school and has 8 pounds of weed and some AKs, which... wow, this is the most successful high school drug dealer of all time.
Yeah, I was like, when I was buying weed in high school, it was more like, yo, I've got like 2 dime bags of Seeds and Stems and some fucking Jimi Hendrix records, or like some Fish bootlegs, man. Definitely no AKs were involved. Right. A lot of bongs that were taller than I was, but that's about it. Like, dude, you sit on the top bunk and I'll light it from down here.
Yeah, man. I guess that means I need to do a high point. There are a couple of jokes in this that I legitimately liked. One of them involving Chet. So Bernie likes to drive around in a dilapidated Porsche that is constantly on the verge of breaking down. And at one point he mutters something like, "Oh God, I think we're burning oil." And Chet's like, I don't know. I smell burning oil every time I'm in this car. I thought that was pretty funny. There's also a movie theater that plays a very small role, and they kind of, brace the projectionist, who, unlike every projectionist I've ever met, is a small, heavily tattooed man with criminal connections.
Yeah. I was like, almost every single one of those is the opposite of people I know. And I used to have lots of friends who worked at the movie theater. So.
Right. Also, the description of how film canisters look is not the most accurate thing I've ever
read.
Like
a Frisbee, but bigger?
Yeah. No, thank you. Anywho, the movie they're showing is Chainsaw Exorcist 2. And I really liked that a lot.
I did too.
I thought that was a great tiny joke that, I don't know, just made me happy.
I also like that the projection of this character says it's even better than the first one.
Yeah. I don't know about you. I'll be looking for that.
However, they then discover his connection to the shady Russian gang by the fact that he's carrying a canister of borscht to eat on his break. Like, it smelled of beets. I remembered beets from when I was kidnapped by those Russians.
Which he describes as his snack, not as his lunch, which is
snack.
A little odd.
Yeah, borscht is a cumbersome snack to carry to work with you and back, for sure.
Yeah.
But, you had to know somehow that he was involved with the shadowy Russian crime syndicate, so why not make it food related when your narrator is a dog?
And as subtle as some aspects of this book are, it is a little surprising that he was not literally carrying a round bomb with a lit fuse or a giant perfectly round sack with a dollar sign on it.
Yeah, I mean, the Russian characters in this are Rocky and Bullwinkle levels. I mean, right down to the dialect that they speak in, which is pretty fucking obnoxious.
I don't think they ever say, please to not be correcting me again, but it's pretty close. And
there is a lot of moose and squirrel type stuff, though, for sure.
Then there's some very cartoony elements of this. The car chase is actually one of the better car chases I've ever read, but when Bernie's car goes higgledy-piggledy, it's described as going end over end multiple times off a cliff, and somehow Bernie
Dude says it's driving.
And somehow Bernie is thrown clear and is able to grab the cliff edge with one hand. And I'm relatively certain that unless you are actually Wile E. Coyote, that can't happen.
Yeah, probably not, but that's okay. I mean, it's a book that's narrated by a dog. It's allowed to be a little cartoony. You should stick around for the next one in the series when you get to meet the hippies named Crash and Disco.
Yes.
All right.
Like most members of a subculture, I'm named after a thing nobody likes and a thing our subculture particularly doesn't like. That's why I'm a punk rocker and my nickname is Hygiene.
Dude, I'm not going to spoil it, but they explain why he's called Disco and it makes sense. But that's for another episode.
Is it because he likes to do it like they do on the Discovery channel?
No, but now we need to take a break. We'll be right back.
Bloodhound is a kind of dog.
Welcome back. It's time to play some games that don't involve fetching anything and bringing it back repeatedly over and over again.
I swear to God, if you do the fake throw the ball trick to me.
Hey, look, where to go? Fuck you. I never did that with Heston because he was a little too infirm and it would have been cruel. But whenever I see people do that to their dog, I get like low-key angry. I'm like, don't fuck with your dog like that. You think that's funny. The dog is just like, what the fuck? You betrayed me.
Yeah.
So don't do that, people. There might be some weird guy judging you because of it, like me.
The more you know.
Also, if you bring your dog to the beach and you have one of those things that lets you throw a tennis ball even farther than they normally go,
oh yeah,
you can't get mad if another dog gets really excited when they see the tennis ball.
Yeah, that's just
this speaking from experience here.
Ooh, tennis ball.
Ooh, that one's really close to me. So let's go ahead and start out with the most fetching segment in podcasting history. I did it too. This is Dramatic Readings.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound important. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
All right, so Dramatic Readings, we're going to take parts of this book and we're going to read them to you dramatically.
Big time.
And Collision, I think you should go first because I know you've made a huge effort to stay on brand here. So you should probably kick this off.
That's true. And while I usually have an eagle eye, or you might say a well-trained nose for sniffing out the parts of the book that involve the sexity sex, this book doesn't really have any of that. In fact, until the very end, the book has barely any cursing in it.
It's relatively chaste in many ways.
Yeah. But I am still going to read to you the magic and mystery, the wit and wisdom of Bernie on a date. I'm going to skip the part where he has lovingly grilled 2 steaks, not knowing his date was a vegetarian.
Hey, but you know what that means.
More steak for Chet!
Woohoo! Party time!
Yeah, so Chet is already stoked on Susie.
Yeah, he likes her because she didn't eat a steak.
Hell yeah. They sat at the kitchen table. I was over in the corner by my bowls. You, drink wine, yes? Or not? Love wine, said Susie. Red or white? Red, please. Hey, me too. Easy on the wine, Bernie. That was my first thought. I'd seen things go wrong in this area before.
Bernie's a bit of a drunk. We haven't really gotten into that yet, but yeah.
Bernie poured. It's from Argentina, he said. I've always wanted to go there. Yeah, me too. If he was going to keep saying me too, we were in for a long night. I spotted a layer of pure fat on one end of my steak and bit into that first. Delicious, said Susie. You like the wine? Very much. Oh, good. Great. I like it too. A nice shade of red. And the taste, not too... what's the word? But at the same time... His voice trailed off. Often, maybe even usually, Bernie ended up being the smartest human in the room. Tonight was different. They clinked glasses. I loved that. Clinking glasses, the sight and the sound. But mostly how no glass got broken. How did they do it? My adventures with glass never turned out that way.
How can you not love this?
Under the table, their feet weren't very far apart.
Oh, no.
Bernie wore flip-flops.
First of all, Bernie. First date, flip-flops? Really?
Even in Arizona, man.
Yeah. Like, at least wear some deck shoes or something. Anyway.
His feet were strong and wide. If you were reduced to spending your life on 2 feet, his might see you through. Susie wore sandals. Her feet looked strong, too, but skinnier and much smaller. Her toenails were painted some dark color, and she wore a silver ring around one toe. Yeah, Susie's one of those girls.
Yeah. What, owns several Indigo Girls records?
Susie was interesting, no doubt about it. An urge came over me to sidestep my way under the table and give her toes a quick lick. I resisted it. She was the guest.
Why do I feel like we've gone into some creepy fan fiction section now? I think it's just the voice you're using. I mean, admittedly, those are some pretty detailed descriptions of feet, but my God, man. I know you're a dog, but please.
Look, you know, there's a niche out there. We thought maybe the private detective with dog niche maybe was a little small, but maybe the private detective with dog for people who are into feet niche, you gotta imagine they're gonna buy whatever they see on the shelf.
Look, I'm not judging you, okay? But I'm not judging anyone, but feet gross me the fuck out, and that part was really hard for me to read. really hard for me to read. And like later on, an old man's feet are described in detail. There's a lot of feet in this book.
It's a dog's eye perspective. Dogs aren't that tall.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And they would definitely judge people by their feet. I think I mentioned that already. So, yeah, sure. But, the whole I wanted to lick her toes thing, I was like, oh, okay.
Also, it leaves open the possibility that since he's only not doing it since she's the guest, the possibility is there that old Chet's just like slurping on old Bernie's toes, of a Tuesday night while they're watching an old DVD.
God, I hope not.
No shame. I'm not here to yuck your yum. It's not my thing. If you want to have your dog lick your feet, that's on you. I probably don't want to hear about it over dinner.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Anyway, Jesus Christ.
Unless you want to hear about me getting it on over dinner as well.
Yeah, that's true. Didn't he have a whole steak he could have been eating at that point in time, too?
I mean, he's a dog.
That's true. It was gone real fast.
Yeah.
That's actually something in the next book that I found really entertaining. Is there's a part where they go to visit someone who has a very small dog, and the dog's bowl is filled with pieces of steak cut up into small strips for the small dog, and it's described once again from Chet's perspective as, I moved closer to the bowl, and then a paragraph later he's like, I looked at the bowl, which was suddenly empty. How did that happen?
It's very, very good. There's a moment late after Bernie's been kidnapped and nobody knows what's going on where Chet doesn't use the word depressed because he's a dog, but Susie can't get him to eat his kibble, and you're like, only the saddest dog
It's true.
doesn't clean out that bowl.
Yeah.
It's well done. The guy knows dogs.
Yeah, he really does. And
Spencer Quinn, I'd like to hang out with you and your dog and pitch you on this great idea I have for a TV show.
His daughter is a political reporter for The Atlantic.
Oh.
Yeah, this guy runs in some rarefied circles, I would say. He's actually won many awards for his writing under his real name, mystery awards. So that's almost as prestigious as a science fiction award. But still, it's like, I feel like the dog thing he treated as kind of a secret shame, which is why he was so weird about revealing who he truly was. And I want to be like, dude, embrace it.
Yeah, dogs are good.
Yeah, and if everyone in the world who wrote books about PIs decided to include more dogs, I would be happy. So, dude, no, there's nothing to be ashamed of here. So I'm glad to see that when I visited the Chet the Dog Facebook page, the pretense has been dropped.
Yeah. I don't know, though. When I pitched you my show, Poirot, but with dogs, you hit the roof.
No, if it was like a snooty kind of dog, like Poirot would have a Pomeranian or something, like for sure, and I would totally be down. What I'm not down with...
A super neurotic Doberman.
What I'm not down with is John Malkovich playing at brooding Poirot that rewrites the entire character's backstory in a way that completely undercuts what makes the character the character. But anyway.
How about my other one, Miss Marple, but she's really young and foxy?
I think that's happened already.
Oh.
And if it hasn't, that same director is going to do it because, don't even get me started. Anyway, don't watch that new Poirot. It's gross.
Sam Spade, but he can't wisecrack and never gets the girl.
That would be good.
That might have been, I think...
I was going to say Fletch.
Yes, Fletch, that notoriously non-wisecracking, non-girl getting character.
You're right. I must be thinking of a completely different movie. To be fair, I think it's been like 20 years since I've seen Fletch.
I watch it. I
was thinking of The Jerk, maybe, as a PI. Different Saturday Night Live guy.
Sure.
He hates these cans, et cetera, et cetera.
I think I would watch The Jerk try to solve a mystery.
The Jerk PI. Anyway.
Oddly, that is probably our first major digression in what I think has been probably our most focused episode in months.
Well, we're talking about dogs, dude.
That's true. That's true.
So speaking of talking about dogs, talking about dogs, Chopped and Screwed remix.
We've got a whole pack of dramatic readings, and now it's time for... do you want the book?
No, I got it. Okay. All right, so this is just Bernie describing how conversations with other dogs work. Sorry, it's Chet. My bad.
Brody would be a much better name for this dog. I'm sorry. I'm going to continue to balk at this.
Yeah, Chet
is not a good name for a dog.
I met a dog at a bar yesterday. Here's a digression for you. Named Jeffrey.
Okay.
Which I actually kind of liked because that is such a person name for this dog. And it was like, a mutt that was mostly dachshund.
Uh-huh.
He was sitting on his owner's lap at the bar, looking very attentively around the place the whole time. And I was like, Jeffrey is a great name for this dog. And Jeffrey was a very cool dog. But Chet is a little rednecky, I feel like. If I met a dog named Chet, I would expect him to bite me.
I mean, this dog would bite you if you were some kind of nefarious villain.
Yeah, well, there's the problem right there. I need to abandon my life of crime and ne'er-do-welling.
Exactly. Else,
Yeah,
you're going to get bit.
it's true. I'll end up with my pant leg inside his grip.
Exactly what I was going to say. Your pant leg about to get perforated, my man.
Yeah.
Doggy style.
Ooh, okay. So here is Chet explaining how dog conversations work. I strolled out onto the back patio with my tail high and stiff and had a cooling drink from the little fountain Leda had put in. Water flowed from the mouth of a stone swan. I'd never seen a real swan, and I was wondering how catchable they might be when I heard Iggy's bark. Iggy had a high-pitched bark, an irritated-sounding yip, yip, yip. I barked back. There was a brief silence, and then he barked again. I barked back. He barked. I barked. He barked. I barked. He barked. We got a good rhythm going, faster and faster. I barked. He barked. A woman cried, Iggy, for God's sakes, what the hell's wrong with you? A door slammed. Iggy went silent. I barked anyway. And what was that? From somewhere far in the distance came an answering bark. A bark I'd never heard before. It sounded female, although I couldn't be sure. A silence. And then, yes, she barked. A bark that sent a message. A she message of the most exciting kind. I barked back. She barked. I barked. She barked. And then, yip, yip, yip. Iggy was back. He barked. She barked. I barked. He barked. Chet, what's all the racket? Let's get going. Bernie had the gate open. I tore past him and hopped into the Porsche, riding shotgun. That part, I had me laughing out loud. Just the repetition of I barked, he barked, she barked.
A she message of the most exciting kind. Like, man, Chet really gets fired up for the old you up.
Yeah, it's true.
Or was that even a full-on come through?
Don't do it, Chet. It's a thirst trap. A she message of the most exciting kind. Yeah, it's 2:00. What you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, but just a straight WID.
No emoticons or anything.
Yeah, just... Wow. So yeah, that was fucking dramatic indeed.
He barked. I barked. He barked.
Oh my God, let's remake She Bop. But every time they say bop, it's barked.
She barked.
Go we barked. I bark. You bark. Me bark.
I think we're about to be millionaires. You earlier you had all these great high concept ideas for stories, but it turns out all you really need to do is make a YouTube video that involves dogs, and then some asshole will steal it and make $1 million off it.
Oh.
And then do a music festival that no one ever shows up to.
Oh.
And then fund a documentary about the same one and make money off people criticizing it.
Am I going to have to be one of those YouTube guys who starts threatening washed up fighters to fight to get attention?
Scott Adams?
Because I don't think that sounds good. Oh my God. I think I told you this, but I'm just going to repeat it for people who are on air. We did a Dilbert Guy book a very long time ago.
Oh, that was a good one.
After which point... Dilbert Guy largely faded from my consciousness, but I was at lunch the other day and dinking around on the internet, as is my wont, and somebody put up a link to a Scott Adams video where he debunked a few of the major controversies of the day. And I was like, oh, I hate myself and value my time poorly. I'll click play on that.
Was he wearing a shirt?
He was wearing a shirt.
Well, that's already a bummer.
As I believe I shared with Jay, the only thing that can be said to match Dilbert Guy's incredible physical magnetism is his intellect. His entire argument, and it took him 25 minutes to articulate this, but his entire argument was, if someone says something that you find hard to believe, it can't be true, because hard to believe things don't happen.
Once you've eliminated the improbable, all that remains is bullshit.
Right, but the hard to believe thing was, in this case, I'm not even going to touch on it, but what it was, could a person have said something that stupid? And his thing was, this is verbatim, you do not have to look at their exact words to know that that is not what they said.
Okay.
So he's... Anyway, that is a story about how I value my time poorly, and I guess you are probably also regretting that we just spent that time together. I apologize to all of you who are listening.
I like
guy.
I like the videos where he has his shirt off and he's just showing his pecs for no reason.
Hell yeah, just flexing and like dunking on people because they have less time to do sit-ups because they don't pay people to draw a comic strip for them.
Yeah, which, by the way, it wouldn't take much time or effort to draw a month's worth of Dilberts in one go. That it's not what we'd call well crafted.
I mean, you wouldn't call it that because you can draw. I can't draw for shit and could not draw a recognizable Dilbert for money. It would 100% come out looking like Bart Simpson left out in the rain.
So it would look like Dilbert. Oh. All right, let's play some... Yes, sir. Let's play some more games. Let's do a What is your fave?
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
Well, it ain't Dilbert.
Oh, goddamn.
Boom!
Take that, 1993's hottest comic strip. Okay, so we got to get into some dark territory here, and I'm sorry. But
well, good thing that as a dog, I see well in the dark.
Not too good with colors, though. And
not too good with colors.
Nor am I, so I could relate, definitely. Every section where he's like, I thought it was a blue flag, but that was just what I thought. I was like, oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
For those at home, I am colorblind. Okay. And not just in the political sense, man. All right. What is your fave? Extremely suspect behavior of Bernie's that's normalized through the narrative lens of a loving animal companion. And I have a list of things here that Bernie does that are maybe not the greatest things, but because we're being told about them by Chet, they're kind of passed off as okay and normal.
So his voting record on the NRA.
Save it, dude. It's for another podcast. I don't want to run afoul of that crowd on the internet. So, anyway. Number 1. An obsession with the amount of wasted water that leads to yelling at complete strangers and mansplaining water usage to potential love interests who are obviously already in agreement with him. So not so much being upset about the waste of water, but the way he...
But being a dick about it.
Yeah, exactly. Number 2, week-long sulking fits / drinking binges that involve not answering the phone or apparently getting out of bed.
Wait. That we're judging that all of a sudden? Is this an intervention? Are you intervening me?
A somewhat startling penchant for violence and a tendency to beat up suspects using vaguely described MMA techniques and enjoying it.
Yeah.
An inability to handle basic finances and the repeated pawning of a prized family heirloom to cover expenses when forced to face the consequences of his actions. Writing his ex-wife bad checks for their son's private school tuition.
Whoa. Pump the brakes, buddy. Starting to feel like this is one of those call-out podcasts all of a sudden.
Lying to people about his status as a law enforcement officer. Or perhaps the most heinous of all, wearing Hawaiian shirts.
So you're so close to my fave, which blends two of yours. One of the specific ways he's financially irresponsible, as described by Chet, and this,
I love this.
This might be the best moment in any book, full stop, is he lost a ton of money investing in a startup that was going to make, because he loves Hawaiian shirts so much, Hawaiian pants.
Which are Zubas.
Except that, like, Hawaiian shirts, they're printed in reverse.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Or they're sewn in reverse. So that the vivid parts are on the inside, and you see only the faded part and then the part that's folded up to sew it. Which means that these pants would look like, yeah, you're right, inside out Zubaz. And anybody who wanted to put so much money into them as to wear them, much less finance their manufacture and distribution, should be in a place where they can get the help they need.
Yeah. Well, in the second book, you'll be glad to know, he gets bilked out of $5,000 by a guy who sells him tin futures at a bar when he's drunk. And once again, just like in this book, the way he bails himself out is by bringing his grandfather's watch to a pawn shop where it's been so many times that the proprietor of the pawn shop says, "Oh, look, it's my favorite timepiece."
Yeah. And then feeds him curried lamb.
Feeds Chet curried lamb, who loves it. He says, "I love ethnic food," quote unquote.
So, this guy has a very different relationship with pawn shops than I used to, which was primarily a place that you can make people the most unhappy while you window shop bases.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, hey, this guitar looks really good. I bet if I bought it, it would ruin someone's life.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. You have a game, right?
Getting a little dark here. Yes, I do. So this is a very, very rare game, and it involves your favorite musician and mine, whose 75th birthday was not that long ago.
Well, but he's dead.
Mr. Mojo Rising himself.
I just learned that was an anagram the other day.
That's a loose-ass anagram. But anyway, yes, it's Jim Morrison, and this game is not about Jim Morrison adopting a puppy, not about Jim Morrison buying treats for dogs he sees on the street. No, this is a game about Jim Morrison, who's being an asshole again.
Oh, jeez.
Remember how it started? Can you remember when? The story's piled up, but now there's more we should have penned. And it's time to buy a journal, time to pick up a pen. 'Cause Jim Morrison is being an asshole again. Yeah, Jim Morrison's being an asshole again.
Okay, I'm really curious to see how you tie this in, because while there is quite a bit of classic music mentioned in this, a lot of Billie Holiday, a lot of old bluesmen are name checked, but I don't recall the Doors being mentioned. So
one of Bernie's most irritating foibles is that he is a ukulele fan and his favorite song to play on ukulele is
Hey Bo Diddley?
Rock the Casbah.
Oh, that's worse.
Which Chet describes as the one that usually makes him go into the other room.
Good on you, Chet.
Yeah. Anyway, so Madison has a parrot. And Madison has trained her parrot as a 16-year-old girl would.
I forgot about this.
To respond to the phrase, "Come on, baby," with the words, "Light my fire." So this is sort of a modified what would they do. Jay, I'm going to assume, for the sake of argument, that if Jim Morrison had a parrot, he would only teach it Doors lyrics.
Yeah.
So if you were Jim Morrison, or just speculating on what Jim Morrison would do, what Doors lyric do you think Jim Morrison would teach his parrot?
Gosh, I need to think about... Okay, yeah. I think Jim Morrison would teach his parrot... He would say, "I just got into town." And then the parrot would unintelligibly say something back that sounds like, "I'm in a mouth!" Because I still don't know what those words are supposed to be.
So I believe it's supposed to be, just got into town about an hour ago.
Okay, I thought it was a little while ago.
I've always heard it, though, as took a couple downs about an hour ago.
Ooh.
Which would also explain why he's got that mush mouth going on.
Yeah, because it literally sounds like, well, that, by the way, out of all of the Doors catalog, which annoys me across the board, that has to be the most annoying Doors song.
Oh, wow. You and I disagree about a lot of things. We may disagree about nothing quite so much as that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, no, that one drives me up the fucking wall. When I said about a bit an hour ago. Yeah.
Just another lost angel.
Mr. Mojo Rising. Which
and that's why you tune in, folks.
Yes, I'm just going to do that for the rest of the show. Mr. Mojo Rising. If we go another 13 minutes, it might match the length of the actual Doors song.
Zing!
Mr. Mojo rising.
So the lyric...
Mr. Sorry, I'll stop.
The lyric I would go with would be not only my favorite Doors lyric, but one of the few Doors lyrics that's genuinely helpful in quotidian life. From Hyacinth House, I see the bathroom is clear.
Is that a real lyric?
Oh, yes.
I can lead her against the door and shoot up. See, I unfortunately, I don't know many Doors songs that aren't radio hits, so I had a pretty slim library to pull from. But yeah, I like the idea of just teaching a parrot to make kind of unintelligible phonetic noise, personally.
Yeah, like a bird.
Yeah, like when a bird talks.
Yeah.
I do like in that scene too, Chet describes the birds vocalizing as having this high-pitched overtone that the humans can't hear, and it drives him crazy when he's like, usually Bernie's really clued into things. I don't understand why he can't hear how annoying this is.
Right.
And it is one of those moments where you're like, oh yeah, dogs, they hear those high-pitched sounds we can't hear. That's cool.
Good dog.
Yeah. Hey, he's a dog. Dogs are outstanding.
Yep. 300 and some pages, folks.
I loved it. I can't tell you. I'm on to about my 700th page of Chet Dog Detective, and I could not love it more.
I was going to say, like, times what? Times 9?
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
I'm bad at mental math on the fly, but that's what, like 2,700 pages?
2,700. That's nearly the length of Infinite Jest.
Infinite Jest could have used more dogs. There's a lot of tennis balls in it. Not a lot of dogs. By the way, just as a digression here before we go to break, do you remember, I guess it would have been 2007, 2008-ish,
No.
There was a point where, like, as a society, we were okay with the Decemberists making an entire music video based on a fictional game from Infinite Jest, and no one was jammed into any lockers about it.
That sounds great to me, because the game was one of, by far, my favorite things about that book. Like, I really, really loved it.
Eschaton.
I never actually saw that video. I've only ever truly loved one Decemberist song, and I love it enough that I don't want to hear any more because I think it would make me like them less.
I like a lot of their old stuff, and I will admit that I was just basically repeating something I've posted on my personal Facebook, and a friend of mine responded with, I think, the most apt description of the Decemberists ever, which was, I love that band. I fell asleep at their concert.
Oh.
Which is... It's on point.
I think they're more of a studio act, I would say.
Yeah.
It's a headphone band, not so much a big live experience band.
Yeah. There's nothing more twee than writing a song about the author of Bee Season, but they managed it. So there you go. Anyway, 2005, ladies and gentlemen, it was a heady time.
So our Decemberists cast.
Okay, we'll be right back. Gonna take a break. All right, we're back. Sadly, no longer talking about dog detectives. But instead, we're going to recommend things that we enjoy to you. So,
sorry if we strayed too far.
I thought you had gotten it all out, but apparently you had to lift your leg one more time. So.
Hell yeah!
I guess I'll start out this time. I'm going to recommend something that is not a book that I enjoyed, which is a television series on Netflix that just came out called Russian Doll. Which is based on a pretty tired premise, I believe, but I thought it did a really good job with it. It stars Natasha Lyonne, who I haven't seen for a really long time in movies. I know she had some hard personal problems, and is kind of in the midst of a comeback, and she's amazing in it. And the story itself is pretty cool. It's kind of like Groundhog Day, except she keeps dying over and over again and waking up in the same bathroom. and trying to figure out why this happens. And this leads to some really good dark comedy. It's really well acted, and I just thought it was a cool spin on a oft-used trope. So I enjoyed that. I also want to recommend, to take a page from Collision's book here, something I read on the internet that I think true crime aficionados will find very interesting. I will say up front that there's some pretty graphic descriptions of sexual assault in it, so keep that in mind if you're going to read this. But CNN published a lengthy 3-part investigation called Lost in the Woods with James Brown's Ghost. And it's about James Brown, his death, and a conspiracy theory that's been floating around for a long time that he was murdered. There's a lot of very, very detailed investigative work that went into it, and it's pretty fascinating stuff if you can stomach kind of the darker side of things. If you like true crime, you should read this. Lost in the Woods with James Brown's Ghost. It's a 3-parter. That's really hard to say. James Brown's Ghost. There you go.
There you go. I'm also going to take a page out of my book and recommend something that's not a book. Jay, did you ever watch Bring It On?
I did, and also I believe it's Bring It On contains one of my favorite songs ever, which would be Flipside by Freeway and Petey Crack.
Okay. When you were watching Bring It On, did you ever wish, gosh, I wish I could watch almost exactly this, but way sassier?
No.
Well, I did. And then I saw a film written and directed by the writer of Bring It On, entitled Stick It. And it is basically very close to Bring It On, except without the political missteps, I would say, that Bring It On is occasionally prone to, and much more focused on one young woman's experience and adventures in the world of gymnastics, which is not, my friends, the world of gymnastics. So do not get it twisted. It's called Stick It. It's absolutely great, and I recommend it very highly.
Is it the world of Gymkata?
It is the world of gymnastics.
If
and
you're
it does
Miss Jackson?
Exactly. And everybody is Miss Jackson because it's all nasty. Everybody's nasty to each other is all I mean. Nobody actually, I think, does the nasty. You don't need to worry about any of that.
That's good.
Yes, very good. Very, very much recommended if you're into that sort of thing. And if you're not, I feel bad for you, son.
I got 99 problems, but
gymnastics
gymnastics
ain't one.
Neither is making jokes about 14-year-old rap songs, ladies and gentlemen.
Whee! Hey,
if
look,
you've got dog problems, I feel bad for you. Hey, I got 99 dachshunds and a Bichon Frise.
Nice. And I just want to say, if Jay-Z would like me to make jokes about more recent songs, he is welcome to make a song worth making jokes about in the last 14 years.
I don't want to get on the wrong side of Mr. Carter. He's too busy owning the Nets and being married to Beyonce.
And as near as I can tell, he's not doing a super great job of either of those things.
Damn. All right. Anyway, sometimes we get letters, and here's a song.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter F, letter G, letter. Got a lot of letters.
All right. Wow.
This letter is from Sean. Oh my God.
Oh no. It's entitled Ether Part 2.
Heard what you said, motherfucker.
And yes, I know Ether was Nas. I can't think of a Jay-Z diss track off the top of my head. I'm sure there was.
Says a lot, doesn't it?
It does. Because I know that he had a couple, but I can't think of who they were towards. I keep wanting to say 50 Cent, maybe? I don't know. Whatever.
No, Ether was about Jay-Z, though. He responded and is widely held to have won the war while losing every battle.
Yeah, because he's rich and famous, and Nas is Nas.
Right. Anywho, this is from longtime listener Brendan, fake last name, and is entitled How the Audiobook Changed Slow Bullets, which we covered a couple episodes ago.
Made it, 30 minutes long and not worth $15.99?
I listened to the Slow Bullets episode, and while I wanted to disagree, oh boy, no. I've been a fan of Reynolds for a while, but he was getting into some serious plot ruts there. I didn't know Slow Bullets was anything other than a novella. Full price for that mediocre work?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyhow, my experience with Slow Bullets was way different, and I was sure it's because I listened to the audiobook. The narrator gave the IT guy the voice and cadence of an utter dweeb. The dweeb's takedown of the religious disagreement from small differences came across as the sort of idiotic white noise you hear from self-righteous online geniuses that you dismiss every day. That is, the performance implied that, not just the content. The audiobook reader's reaction was dictating how a listener should react. That's awesome.
That is.
The reader chose for the main character a voice terribly world-weary, and every plotting step they take seems to drain everything out of them. Their plans for revenge seem more like a distraction, and their jump-starting of old civilizations comes across as a slightly better pastime than shaking a jar of ants to watch them fight. The borderline nihilism may not have been the most original characterization in the world, but it was far superior to the raw text. Looking back at the actual text instead of the performance, it's radically different. Sorry for the wall of text. I was just so blown away by how much improvement the audiobook reader was able to accomplish. So that kind of left me thinking how funny it is if the, interpreter decides to do that. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's like you don't expect the actor holding up the skull and saying, "Alas, Horatio," alas, I knew him, or alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio, while making like the J-O motion. Yeah. That would change the text quite a bit.
It makes me wonder now, do authors have, the opportunity to veto the readings of their books? Because I have a feeling that the author of Slow Bullets would have been like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
When, this character is used as a mouthpiece to deliver his serious political message, and the fact that it's done in a total dweebo voice, oh, I love it. That's great.
He really would have said, "Oi, mate."
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Well,
no,
he's English.
He's Welsh, right?
He's British.
Yes,
he's from the British Isles.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think he would say "Oi, mate," to be honest. But either way,
are you Arvin a larf? He might say.
He'd be too busy, performatively smoking a pipe and wearing elbow patches.
He might say, "Leave it off,"
yeah,
or "Leave it out."
Pull the other one.
Yeah. Anyway, I tried to watch Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels the other week. It went poorly.
Fancy a dig. You like digs, eh? Oh, that's Snatch. Never mind.
Yeah. Anyway, what was the other one? Okay, this one is from Nick, fake last name, and it's entitled Jimmy Buffett Pig Song.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember doing that.
I just wanted to let you know that I really liked the song JW made out of that Jimmy Buffett poem in Swine Not. Thanks, Nick.
That's awesome. I spent a long time.
This is the best letter I think we've ever gotten.
I mean, I have no response to that other than thank you. I spent way too much time on it, as I am prone to do when I get a bad idea in my head, because I've thought many times if I had the level of follow-through on important things in my life as I do on bad joke ideas, my life would have turned out much, much differently. I could say I'd probably be very wealthy, but instead of doing things, like starting a business or something like that, I would rather, spend 6 or 7 hours at a go recording bad pastiche of Jimmy Buffett songs about a pig.
Or spend hours every 2 weeks reading garbage and talking about it.
Hey, this is one of the most successful things I've ever done. So I'm gonna hold that one at bay. That totally. Criticism, because
no, that's not a criticism.
I don't want to spoil the magic.
No, it's not a criticism. I'm just saying, it's not how everybody chooses to spend their time, and that's why we choose to spend our time this way for your benefit. If you'd like to say thank you, please do at I don't even own a television at gmail.com.
Or even still, visit us at patreon.com/IDEOTVPod, where you could make a monthly donation, help us keep doing what we're doing. If you donate at the $5 level, you get a what?
Bonus episode.
Oh, shit. Yep. A whole new episode every month that normal folks don't get to hear.
Yeah. The normies?
Yeah.
The plebs, the squares? They get 2 episodes a month, or an episode every 2 weeks. The special people, the heroes, the lovers, the dreamers.
The dog detectives.
The dog detectives amongst us get an episode of their very own every single month.
It's true. And if you pledge now, you also have access to the back catalog of all of those episodes, and I think there's over 30 of them now, or close to 30 of them.
I think we're fitting to record the 33rd of them, if I'm not mistaken.
So that's a lot of stuff you may not have heard, but beyond that, also, we just really appreciate your support.
Yep.
But even if you don't, or you can't donate financially, we suggest you go there anyway, because there's a feed of bonus content on there available to everyone for free, and sometimes we put up random things there that don't really fit our normal episode schedule.
Or just because we effing feel like it, because we're a couple of internet tough guys. We do what we want.
Exactly. So definitely tune in there if you'd like to hear me challenge people to fights. No, that doesn't actually happen.
It has been a lot of episodes since you said, like, I will fight you with knives and I will win.
I need to bring that back
We need
now
to bring it
that
back.
you mention it.
Kick it old school.
Because if you disagree with that, I will fight you with knives. But yeah, beyond that, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Find us. It's not hard.
Yep. It's IDEOTV pod on Twitter. It's the I Don't Even Own a Television Fun Time Party Pit on Facebook, which is a great place to hang around, goof off with like-minded folks. You can talk about bad books. You can talk about good books. You can talk about good books that you think are bad. You can talk about bad books that you think are good. You can talk about pretty much whatever you want. Also, if you're interested in looking at pictures of crabs, pretty much one-stop shopping right there, my man.
That's true. There's a lot of pictures of crabs. Also, I totally forgot, but the thing you mentioned earlier with the author being reinterpreted through voice of the reader reminded me of a thread that happened there recently where people were recommending video games, which is a hobby of mine, and I've only played like 2 hours of this game. I'm not going to mention it by name because apparently the dude that makes it is a serious creeper that you shouldn't give money to. But I was like, hey, I think a lot of people here might enjoy this game. It's about how, young men in their 20s are really fucking annoying when they first come back from college and they think they know everything about the world and are talking about existential and somebody responded and was like, dude, that's a self-insert for the creator of this game. He really talks like that. Oh, and then I did some research and was like, I heartily take back my recommendations. So,
this searing parody, and the author is like, I beg your pardon?
No, I was like, this unintentionally unlikable protagonist, and nope. He's supposed to be a cool bro.
Damn it. Well, I hope that guy buys a dog.
Yeah, me too.
You know why? Because everybody deserves a little bit of love, and it sounds like a dog might be the one to love that guy.
There is a mystery afoot in this game, too, and he'd probably be better off with a dog helping him than, his fetid observations about the nature of reality, man.
If we could teach a dog to play video games and put that on YouTube, we might actually make a little bit of money. People like dog videos.
Doggo plays Pokemon.
OMG.
All right.
So if there aren't any episodes after this, it's because we're reclining on matching yachts and giant piles of money.
But you can find us on Twitch, where a dog will be playing video games. We're not actually on Twitch. And I don't think dogs can play video games. Anyway, until next time, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Pet the dog and
ride the crab.